The discovery. In the dim light of an abandoned research facility, Elara Hartley adjusted her glasses as she scanned her surroundings. The air was thick with dust and neglect, remnants of experiments long forgotten. As a wildlife biologist specializing in alien species, she had heard whispers of unusual creatures lurking in this forsaken place. Today, she was determined to uncover the truth behind those rumors. Elara stepped cautiously over scattered debris, her heart racing with anticipation. The facility had been shut down after a series of unexplained incidents involving genetic experiments gone awry. Now, it stood as a ghostly reminder of ambition unchecked. She switched on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom like a knife. Suddenly, a faint sound reached her ears, a high-pitched whimpering that seemed to echo off the walls. Intrigued and anxious, she followed the sound deeper into the facility. As she navigated through rusted machinery and broken equipment, she felt an inexplicable pull toward whatever was making that noise. Elara reached a large containment chamber at the back of the building. The door hung ajar, creaking ominously as she pushed it open. Inside, she was greeted by an astonishing sight: 3 tiny dragon hatchlings huddled together in a corner, their scales shimmering faintly in shades of crimson, silver, and deep blue. They were no larger than human toddlers but radiated an aura of otherworldly beauty. Her breath caught in her throat as she recognized them. These were not just any creatures, they were hatchlings of Zephyr, one of the most feared dragon species in the galaxy. Legend spoke of their mother's terrifying power and her ability to raise entire cities if provoked. Yet here they were, abandoned and vulnerable. "What are you doing here?" Elara whispered softly as she knelt down to their level. The hatchlings looked up at her with wide eyes filled with fear and confusion. Their soft chirps resonated like fragile echoes in the vast chamber. As she examined them closely, Elara noticed their frail bodies trembling from malnourishment and dehydration. It was clear they had been left alone for far too long. Her instincts kicked in, she couldn't leave them here to perish. Gently extending her hand toward them, she spoke soothingly, "It's okay. I'm here to help you." The smallest hatchling, a black one, took a hesitant step forward and sniffed her hand before nuzzling against it. A wave of warmth flooded through Elara. They were not just creatures to be feared, they were innocent beings in need of care. With determination coursing through her veins, Elara scooped up all 3 hatchlings carefully into her arms. They felt light as feathers against her chest as she cradled them close. "Let's get you out of here," she murmured softly. As she made her way back through the facility's dark corridors, Elara couldn't shake off the feeling that this discovery would change everything, not just for her but for these lost hatchlings who had been thrust into a world that would never understand them. Once outside, Elara hurried toward her vehicle parked under flickering streetlights that barely illuminated the deserted area surrounding the facility. She placed the hatchlings gently into a cushioned carrier designed for exotic species before climbing into the driver's seat. As she drove back to her clinic, a modest establishment filled with various alien life forms, her mind raced with questions about how these creatures ended up alone and what it meant for their future. The Galactic Council would undoubtedly see them as potential threats rather than innocent beings deserving compassion. Upon arriving at her clinic, Elara wasted no time setting up an examination area for her new charges. She worked quickly but carefully, monitoring their vitals and administering nutrient serum to combat their dehydration and malnourishment. "Hang in there," she whispered as she watched them begin to respond positively to her care. Their energy levels slowly improved, they chirped softly as they nestled together on a heated examination table designed for smaller creatures. Just then, an alert from her clinic's AI assistant interrupted her thoughts. "Incoming communication from Galactic Council," it announced in its monotone voice. Elara's heart sank at the realization that they had likely been alerted about her discovery already. She took a deep breath before answering, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders as she prepared for whatever awaited on the other side of this call. The holographic image flickered to life before her, a stern figure clad in formal attire representing authority beyond comprehension within this galaxy. Dr. Hartley, it began with an air of command that sent shivers down her spine. We have received reports regarding your recent findings. Yes, Elara replied cautiously, trying to keep her composure despite feeling exposed under its scrutinizing gaze. The Council requires immediate information on your intentions regarding those creatures, it continued without preamble. Elara glanced at the sleeping hatchlings beside her, innocent beings who deserved protection rather than condemnation from those who viewed them solely as threats. They're just hatchlings, she said firmly but respectfully. They need care and nurturing. The emissary's expression remained impassive as it responded coldly. These creatures belong to an apex predator species classified under Galactic Preservation Act regulations. Elara felt anger rising within her but fought against it. These were not monsters, they were lost souls seeking refuge from a world that had forsaken them. Please understand, she implored passionately as hope flickered within her heart like a candle fighting against darkness. They're not dangerous. They're just scared. The emissary's gaze hardened further, a clear indication that compassion was not part of its agenda. Your cooperation is required, it stated flatly before disconnecting without another word. Left alone with only silence echoing around her clinic walls, Elara felt despair wash over her like icy water. She knew what awaited these hatchlings if they fell into Council hands. Experiments would replace care, fear would replace trust. But deep down inside herself burned an unwavering resolve. She would protect these innocent beings at all costs, even if it meant defying authority itself. The rescue plan. Elara Hartley stood in her clinic, the soft hum of machines surrounding her as she contemplated the gravity of her situation. The hatchlings, now resting peacefully on the examination table, had become more than just patients. They were a symbol of hope against the backdrop of fear and misunderstanding that surrounded their kind. She had discovered them in a forsaken warehouse, and now she was faced with the daunting task of keeping them safe from the Galactic Council, who viewed them as potential threats. With a determined heart, Elara began to devise a plan. She needed help, someone who understood the risks involved in smuggling these hatchlings away from Galactic Central. As she paced back and forth, her mind wandered to Yarrick, the rogue pilot she had met during her earlier research expeditions. He had a reputation for bending the rules and navigating through dangerous territories. If anyone could help her get the hatchlings to safety, it was him. After a few moments of hesitation, Elara activated her communicator and sent a message to Yarrick, detailing her discovery and the imminent danger posed by the Council. She knew he was likely in a bar somewhere in the lower levels of the city, surrounded by shady characters and questionable deals. The thought made her nervous but also gave her a spark of hope. Minutes later, as she prepared medical supplies for their journey, her communicator buzzed with an incoming response. Elara, Jarek's voice crackled through the speaker, laced with curiosity and concern. You found dragons? This is big news. It's not just news, Yarrick, Elara replied urgently. They're hatchlings, abandoned and vulnerable. The Council is sending a retrieval team to take them away for containment. I need your help to smuggle them out before it's too late. There was a brief silence on the other end before Yarrick responded, I'm in. But we'll need a solid plan and a fast ship. Elara felt relief wash over her. I have some supplies ready. Meet me at my clinic in an hour. As she hung up, she felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. The stakes were high. If they were caught, not only would they face severe penalties from the Council, but the hatchlings' fate would be sealed in captivity. An hour later, Yarrick arrived at Elara's clinic with his rugged charm and undeniable confidence. He wore a worn leather jacket that hinted at countless adventures and misadventures across the galaxy. So, where are these little dragons? He asked with an amused grin as he stepped inside. Elara led him to the examination room where the hatchlings lay nestled together under warm lights. Their bioluminescent scales flickered softly in response to Jarek's presence. They're beautiful, he said softly, his demeanor shifting as he knelt closer to observe them. "They're also scared," Elara replied, her voice tinged with concern. "We need to keep them calm while we figure out how to get them out of here." Yarrick nodded thoughtfully as he examined their fragile forms. "What's our route?" "The Council will be monitoring all exits from Galactic Central. I've been researching possible escape routes," Elara explained as she pulled up a holographic map on her console. "There's an old maintenance tunnel that leads out of the city's industrial zone. It hasn't been used in years, so it might not be on their radar." "Sounds risky," Yarrick said skeptically. "Risky is better than captivity," Elara countered firmly. "All right then," he relented with a smirk. "Let's do this." Together they began packing supplies, medical kits for emergencies, nutrient serum for the hatchlings during their journey, and blankets to keep them warm. As they worked side by side, Elara felt a growing sense of camaraderie with Yarrick. He was more than just a rogue pilot, he was someone who understood the importance of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. With everything packed and ready to go, they carefully placed the hatchlings into a specially designed carrier that would keep them safe during transport. The carrier was equipped with life support systems that would monitor their vitals and provide comfort during their journey. As they prepared to leave, Elara glanced back at her clinic one last time, a sanctuary that had become home to many lost creatures over the years. She hoped she would return one day with good news about these hatchlings. "Let's move," Yarrick urged gently as he opened the door leading out into the dimly lit corridor outside. The streets of Galactic Central were alive with activity as they made their way toward the maintenance tunnel entrance hidden behind an old warehouse. They moved quickly but cautiously, every shadow felt like it could be hiding someone from the Council watching their every move. As they approached their destination, Elara felt her heart race with anticipation and fear. Would they make it out undetected? Would they be able to reunite these innocent creatures with their mother? Once inside the maintenance tunnel, they navigated through darkened passages filled with dust and debris left behind from years of neglect. The air was stale but carried an undercurrent of freedom, a promise of escape from the clutches of authority. "Keep quiet," Yarrick whispered as they moved deeper into the tunnel, his senses heightened for any signs of danger. Elara nodded silently. She could hear faint echoes reverberating off the walls, sounds that sent chills down her spine but also fueled her determination to protect these hatchlings at all costs. After what felt like hours of traversing through winding passages illuminated only by dim emergency lights flickering overhead, they finally reached an exit point leading outside Galactic Central's perimeter. Yarrick pushed open the heavy door cautiously while Elara held her breath. Would there be guards waiting for them? To their relief, they emerged into an empty alleyway bathed in moonlight, a stark contrast to the chaos within the city limits. "We did it!" Elara exclaimed quietly as they stepped outside into freedom. But their celebration was short-lived. Just as they began moving toward Jarrek's ship parked nearby, alarms blared throughout Galactic Central. The Council had been alerted about their escape. "Run!" Yarrick shouted as he grabbed Elara's hand and pulled her toward his ship, the Nebula Whisper, its sleek frame glinting under starlight like a beacon of hope amidst impending danger. They sprinted toward it as blaster fire erupted behind them. Elara could hear shouts echoing through the alleyway. The Council's retrieval team was hot on their trail. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, they reached the ship just in time. Yarrick punched in commands while Elara secured the hatchlings inside their containment pod before strapping herself into her seat beside him. "Hold on!" Yarrick yelled as he initiated takeoff procedures. The engines roared to life beneath them while alarms blared ominously around them. The ship shot upward into space just as blaster fire ricocheted off its hull, a close call that left both Elara and Yarrick breathless but exhilarated at having narrowly escaped capture. As they soared away from Galactic Central into open space filled with stars twinkling like diamonds scattered across velvet fabric, Elara turned to look at Yarrick, a mixture of gratitude and awe filling her heart. "Thank you," she breathed sincerely. "Without him by her side this wouldn't have been possible." "Just doing what needs to be done," he replied nonchalantly but couldn't hide his smile. There was something undeniably thrilling about this adventure they had embarked upon together. The journey begins. As the Nebula Whisper glided through the vastness of space, Elara Hartley felt a mix of exhilaration and anxiety. The hatchlings, nestled safely in their containment pod, were beginning to stir, their bioluminescent scales flickering with anticipation. They were nearing their home planet, Darera, and with it came the hope of reuniting them with their mother, Zephyr. Yarrick, seated at the controls, glanced over at Elara. "We're making good time," he said, his voice steady despite the tension that still lingered from their narrow escape. "If we keep this pace, we should reach Darera in a few hours." Elara nodded but couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in her stomach. What if the council finds us again? They'll stop at nothing to retrieve those hatchlings. "We'll be ready for them," Yarrick replied confidently. "I've got a few tricks up my sleeve." His smirk was reassuring, but Elara knew that they were walking a tightrope between freedom and capture. As they continued their journey, Elara took a moment to observe the hatchlings. Ember, the crimson-scaled one, was now pacing restlessly inside the pod, her sharp claws scratching against the reinforced walls. Glint, the silver hatchling, seemed entranced by the ship's control panels, occasionally attempting to escape to explore. Shade, the smallest of the trio with his obsidian scales and deep blue highlights, chirped softly whenever Elara was nearby, seeking comfort in her presence. "They're restless," Elara remarked as she approached the pod. "Can you blame them? They've been torn from everything they know." "Exactly," Yarrick agreed as he adjusted their course. "But we'll get them home soon enough." Just then, an alert blared through the ship's console, a warning that sent adrenaline coursing through both of them. "Incoming vessel detected," the ship's AI announced in its calm yet urgent tone. Elara's heart raced as she exchanged worried glances with Yarrick. "It's got to be an interceptor from the council," she said breathlessly. "Can we outrun them?" Elara asked anxiously. "Not likely," Yarrick replied grimly as he initiated evasive maneuvers. "But I have a plan." He engaged the ship's decoy systems, releasing a cluster of false energy signatures into space. The interceptor fired at the decoys, allowing them precious moments to veer off course and slip into a dense asteroid field, a chaotic labyrinth of rock and debris that could either provide cover or spell disaster. "Hold on!" Yarrick shouted as he expertly navigated through the treacherous terrain. The ship shuddered violently as they dodged massive asteroids tumbling through space like giants awakened from slumber. Elara clung tightly to her seat while keeping an eye on the hatchlings. Their glowing scales dimmed with fear as they huddled together inside their pod. "It's okay," she reassured them softly despite her own rising anxiety. "We're going to get you home." As they maneuvered through the asteroid field, Yarrick's skills were put to the test. He weaved in and out of obstacles with precision that left Elara both impressed and terrified. The ship rattled violently at times as asteroids brushed against its hull, but Yarrick remained focused and determined. After what felt like an eternity of heart-pounding moments, they finally emerged from the asteroid field into open space once more, leaving the Council's interceptor far behind. "That should keep them off our trail for now," Yarrick said with a sigh of relief as he slumped back in his pilot's chair. Elara exhaled slowly, her heart still racing from their narrow escape. "Let's not waste this head start," she said firmly as she turned her attention back to the hatchlings. As they continued toward Darera, anticipation filled the air aboard the Nebula Whisper. The hatchlings grew more animated, their bioluminescent scales glowed brighter with each passing moment as if sensing that they were nearing home. "We're almost there," Elara said softly to them, her voice filled with quiet determination. "You're about to see your mother again." With Darara's storm-swept surface coming into view, their destination looming closer, Elara felt a surge of emotions welling up within her. This journey was more than just a rescue mission, it was a chance to prove that these creatures, often feared and misunderstood, were capable of forming bonds just like any other sentient beings in the galaxy. However, she also knew that reaching Darera would be only half the battle. Finding Zephyr and ensuring her safety would pose its own set of challenges. As they descended toward Darera's lush forests, a stark contrast to Galactic Central's metallic sprawl, Elara couldn't help but admire its beauty from above. Vibrant greens mingled with deep blues where rivers snaked through valleys dotted with ancient trees towering high into the atmosphere. "Prepare for landing," Yarrick instructed as he expertly piloted their ship toward a secluded clearing near a mountain range known for being Zephyr's nesting grounds. Once on solid ground, Elara wasted no time securing the hatchlings' pod and ensuring they were comfortable before stepping outside into fresh air filled with scents unfamiliar yet invigorating. "Stay close," she said gently as she opened the pod door carefully. Ember immediately darted out while Glint followed closely behind, both eager to explore this new environment after being confined for so long. Shade lingered back for a moment before inching closer to Elara. Sensing his hesitation, she knelt down beside him and extended her hand encouragingly. "It's okay," she whispered softly as he pressed his snout against her palm, a gesture that warmed her heart. With newfound resolve coursing through her veins, Elara stood up straight and scanned their surroundings. Every rustle in the foliage felt like an omen, a sign that Zephyr could be nearby searching desperately for her lost children. "Let's find your mother," she murmured determinedly before turning back toward Yarrick who had been observing quietly from behind. "Do you think she'll accept us?" he asked cautiously while keeping an eye on Ember who was already exploring nearby bushes with curiosity. "I hope so," Elara replied sincerely. Uncertainty lingered in her voice but was overshadowed by unwavering determination. She believed that love could bridge even the widest gaps between species if given a chance. An unexpected encounter. The nebula whisper glided silently through the atmosphere of Darera, the lush green forests and towering mountains coming into view. Elara Hartley felt a mix of excitement and trepidation as she prepared for the final leg of their journey. The hatchlings, nestled safely in their containment pod, were beginning to stir with anticipation. They could sense they were close to home. "Hold tight, little ones," Elara whispered, her heart racing at the thought of reuniting them with their mother, Zephyr. She glanced at Yarrick, who was focused on piloting the ship. "What's our plan once we land?" "We'll head to the nesting grounds near the mountains," Yarrick replied, his voice steady. "That's where Zephyr is most likely to be. We'll need to be careful, she won't take kindly to intruders." Elara nodded, her mind racing with thoughts of how Zephyr would react. Would she recognize her hatchlings? Would she see them as a threat? The stories she had heard about Zephyr's ferocity echoed in her mind, but she pushed those fears aside. These hatchlings needed their mother, and she was determined to make that happen. As they descended toward a secluded clearing in the forest, the ship's sensors suddenly blared an alarm. "Incoming vessel detected," the AI announced. "What now?" Elara exclaimed, her heart sinking. "It's another interceptor," Yarrick said grimly as he scanned the readings. "They must have tracked us here." Elara felt a surge of panic. "We can't let them take the hatchlings. We need to find a way to hide." Yarrick quickly maneuvered the ship behind a cluster of trees just as the interceptor entered the atmosphere. "We'll wait for them to pass," he said, his fingers dancing over the controls. The interceptor hovered above their location, its searchlights sweeping through the forest. Elara held her breath, praying that they wouldn't be discovered. She could see the hatchlings peering out from their pod, their bioluminescent scales dimming with fear. "Stay quiet," Elara whispered softly to them, reaching out to reassure Shade, who was trembling slightly. After what felt like an eternity, the interceptor finally moved on, its engines fading into the distance. Yarrick let out a relieved sigh. "That was close." "Too close," Elara replied as she steadied herself. "We need to get moving before they come back." Once they were sure it was safe, Yarrick piloted the Nebula Whisper toward their landing zone. As they touched down in a small clearing surrounded by dense foliage, Elara wasted no time securing the hatchlings' pod and preparing for their next steps. "Let's get them out and find Zephyr," she said with determination. They carefully opened the pod, allowing Ember, Glint, and Shade to emerge into the fresh air of Darera for the first time. The hatchlings blinked in awe at their surroundings, the vibrant colors of nature contrasting sharply with the sterile environment of Galactic Central. "Look at them," Elara said softly as she watched them explore cautiously. "They're finally home." As Ember darted off into a nearby thicket, Glint followed closely behind while Shade stayed close to Elara's side. She knelt down to comfort him, feeling a wave of warmth wash over her as he nuzzled against her hand. "Stay close," she reminded him gently before turning to Yarok. "We need to find Zephyr quickly." They ventured deeper into the forest, guided by instinct and hope. The sounds of chirping creatures filled the air as they navigated through thick underbrush and towering trees that seemed to whisper secrets from ages past. After some time spent searching without success, Elara began to feel a sense of unease creeping in. "What if we can't find her?" she asked quietly. "We will," Yarok reassured her. "Just keep your eyes and ears open." As they continued their search, a rustling sound caught Elara's attention. A low growl reverberated through the air that sent chills down her spine. She exchanged worried glances with Yarok. Something was nearby. Suddenly, from behind a massive tree trunk emerged a creature that made both Elara and Yarok freeze in place, a massive dragon with iridescent scales that shimmered like liquid silver under sunlight stood before them. "Zephyr," Elara breathed in awe as she recognized the legendary dragon from countless tales told across galaxies. The dragon's piercing gaze locked onto them, its eyes filled with an intelligence that was both captivating and terrifying. It let out a deep rumble that echoed through the forest, its presence commanded respect and fear in equal measure. "Stay calm," Yarok whispered urgently as he positioned himself protectively in front of Elara and Shade. Elara took a step forward despite her racing heart. This was Zephyr, the mother of the hatchlings who had been abandoned and lost for far too long. "We're here to help you," she called out bravely. Zephyr tilted her massive head slightly as if contemplating their words, then her gaze shifted toward Shade who stood beside Elara, his small form dwarfed by his mother's imposing size. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. Shade took a tentative step forward and chirped softly toward Zephyr. The dragon's demeanor shifted instantly, recognition sparked in her eyes as she lowered her head closer to Shade, who chirped again in response. Elara watched in awe as an emotional reunion unfolded before her eyes. Zephyr nudged Shade gently with her snout while Ember and Glint joined them, each hatchling instinctively gravitating toward their mother's warmth and protection. Tears welled up in Elara's eyes as she witnessed this poignant moment, a bond forged through love and instinct transcending all boundaries between species. But just as hope began to blossom within her heart, an ominous sound shattered their peaceful reunion. The unmistakable roar of engines echoed through the trees followed by shouts from armed figures approaching fast. "The Council!" Yarok exclaimed urgently as he turned back toward Elara. Panic surged within him knowing they had little time left before reinforcements arrived. "We have to get them out of here!" Elara shouted desperately while glancing back at Zephyr who was now fully aware of their impending danger. With instinct kicking in, Zephyr spread her enormous wings wide, casting shadows over Elara and Yarok while shielding her hatchlings protectively beneath her body. A fierce growl emanating from deep within her chest warned any would-be intruders to stay back. "Let's go!" Yarok urged as he began retreating deeper into the forest while keeping an eye on Zephyr. He knew they needed distance from whatever threat loomed behind them. Elara followed closely behind, but not without glancing back one last time at Zephyr, the majestic creature standing resolute against any force that dared approach, a guardian ready to protect what mattered most, her young ones. Reunion and resolution. As the nebula whisper glided toward the storm-swept surface of Darera, Elara Hartley felt a whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. The hatchlings, now more animated than ever, chirped excitedly as their bioluminescent scales pulsed in vibrant hues. They could sense that they were close to home, and with that realization came a surge of hope. Yarrick, seated at the controls, glanced over at Alara. "We're almost there," he said, his voice steady despite the tension that still lingered from their narrow escape. "Just a little further." Alara nodded, her heart racing as they descended through the clouds. The lush landscapes of Darera unfolded beneath them, vibrant greens mingling with deep blues where rivers snaked through valleys dotted with ancient trees. It was a breathtaking sight, one that reminded her of everything worth fighting for. As they approached the designated landing zone near Zephyr's nesting grounds, Alara felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Would Zephyr accept them? Would she recognize her hatchlings? The stories she had heard about Zephyr's ferocity echoed in her mind, but she pushed those fears aside. These hatchlings needed their mother, and she was determined to make that happen. Once they landed, Yarrick powered down the ship and turned to Alara. "Let's get them out and find Zephyr," he urged. Alara carefully opened the containment pod, allowing Ember, Glint, and Shade to emerge into the fresh air of Darera for the first time. The hatchlings blinked in awe at their surroundings, the vibrant colors of nature contrasting sharply with the sterile environment of Galactic Central. "Look at them," Alara said softly as she watched them explore cautiously. "They're finally home." Ember darted off into a nearby thicket, her crimson scales shimmering in the sunlight. Glint followed closely behind, while Shade lingered near Alara's side. She knelt down to comfort him, feeling a wave of warmth wash over her as he nuzzled against her hand. "Stay close," she reminded him gently before turning to Yarrick. "We need to find Zephyr quickly." They ventured deeper into the forest, guided by instinct and hope. The sounds of chirping creatures filled the air as they navigated through thick underbrush and towering trees that seemed to whisper secrets from ages past. After some time spent searching without success, Alara began to feel a sense of unease creeping in. "What if we can't find her?" she asked quietly. "We will," Yarrick reassured her. "Just keep your eyes and ears open." As they continued their search, a rustling sound caught Alara's attention, a low growl reverberated through the air that sent chills down her spine. She exchanged worried glances with Yarrick, something was nearby. Suddenly, from behind a massive tree trunk emerged a creature that made both Alara and Yarrick freeze in place, a massive dragon with iridescent scales that shimmered like liquid silver under sunlight stood before them. "Zephyr," Alara breathed in awe as she recognized the legendary dragon from countless tales told across galaxies. The dragon's piercing gaze locked onto them, its eyes filled with an intelligence that was both captivating and terrifying. It let out a deep rumble that echoed through the forest, its presence commanded respect and fear in equal measure. "Stay calm," Yarrick whispered urgently as he positioned himself protectively in front of Alara and Shade. Alara took a step forward despite her racing heart. This was Zephyr, the mother of the hatchlings who had been abandoned and lost for far too long. "We're here to help you," she called out bravely. Zephyr tilted her massive head slightly as if contemplating their words, then her gaze shifted toward Shade who stood beside Alara, his small form dwarfed by his mother's imposing size. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. Shade took a tentative step forward and chirped softly toward Zephyr. The dragon's demeanor shifted instantly, recognition sparked in her eyes as she lowered her head closer to Shade, who chirped again in response. Alara watched in awe as an emotional reunion unfolded before her eyes. Zephyr nudged Shade gently with her snout while Ember and Glint joined them, each hatchling instinctively gravitating toward their mother's warmth and protection. Tears welled up in Alara's eyes as she witnessed this poignant moment, a bond forged through love and instinct transcending all boundaries between species. But just as hope began to blossom within her heart, an ominous sound shattered their peaceful reunion. The unmistakable roar of engines echoed through the trees followed by shouts from armed figures approaching fast. "The Council!" Yarrick exclaimed urgently as he turned back toward Alara. Panic surged within him knowing they had little time left before reinforcements arrived. "We have to get them out of here." Elara shouted desperately while glancing back at Zephyr, who was now fully aware of their impending danger. With instinct kicking in, Zephyr spread her enormous wings wide, casting shadows over Elara and Yerrick while shielding her hatchlings protectively beneath her body. A fierce growl emanating from deep within her chest warned any would-be intruders to stay back. "Let's go," Yerrick urged as he began retreating deeper into the forest while keeping an eye on Zephyr. He knew they needed distance from whatever threat loomed behind them. Elara followed closely behind, but not without glancing back one last time at Zephyr, the majestic creature standing resolute against any force that dared approach, a guardian ready to protect what mattered most, her young ones. As they maneuvered through thick underbrush, Elara felt adrenaline coursing through her veins. Every rustle around them felt amplified by fear, but also by hope, the hope that together they could overcome any obstacle standing between family reunited. Finally reaching a clearing where they could regroup safely away from prying eyes, Elara turned to Yerrick with urgency etched on her face. "We need to find a way to communicate with Zephyr, to let her know we're not enemies." Yerrick nodded thoughtfully before pulling out his communicator, a device designed for interspecies communication he had acquired during his travels. "This should help," he said as he activated it, sending out signals meant for dragonkind specifically. As they waited anxiously, Zephyr remained vigilant, her massive form blocking any potential threats while keeping close watch over Shade, Ember, and Glint, who were now huddled together beneath their mother's protective wings. Moments later, a low rumble resonated through the air. The communicator crackled alive with sounds resembling ancient dragon calls, a language lost to most but understood by those attuned to its essence. Elara felt hope surge within her heart. This was it, the moment where understanding could bridge gaps forged by fear and misunderstanding. "Zephyr," she called out softly yet firmly, ensuring clarity in every word spoken into the communicator. "We mean you no harm. We saved your hatchlings because we care about them." The great dragon tilted her head slightly, curiosity evident in those piercing eyes, as if weighing Elara's sincerity against instinctual distrust bred from centuries of survival amidst threats lurking everywhere around them. After what felt like an eternity, the tension broke when Zephyr lowered herself closer toward Elara, an unspoken understanding passing between them like an electric current igniting hope anew within their hearts. "Thank you for bringing them home," Zephyr rumbled deeply, a voice resonating with power yet softened by maternal warmth, a sound that enveloped everyone present like a protective blanket against uncertainty looming ahead. With emotions running high, Elara stepped forward cautiously, extending her hand toward one of Shade's siblings who peered out from beneath their mother's wing. Ember looked up at her curiously before nuzzling against Elara's palm, a gesture signaling acceptance born from trust forged amidst adversity faced together along this journey filled with challenges yet rewarding beyond measure. As dawn broke over Darera, illuminating everything around them, the bond formed between humans and dragons transcended boundaries once thought insurmountable. With renewed purpose fueling their spirits, they knew this was just beginning. They would work together towards protecting not only these hatchlings but also ensuring safety for all creatures facing threats posed by those who fail to understand true nature lies beneath surface appearances. Together, united against forces seeking control over lives deserving freedom, they would stand tall, forging paths filled with compassion, understanding, bridging divides once thought impossible. And